The sudden shift in energy was palpable. The crowd, initially eager to enjoy the light-hearted moments of the evening, fell into an uneasy silence. Adrian, sensing he might have overstepped but unsure of how to recover, awkwardly shuffled his notes. He chuckled nervously, hoping the audience would follow suit, but it was clear they were waiting for Will's reaction. Will Smith, ever the professional, sat motionless for a moment, his gaze fixed on Adrian. His fingers subtly clenched the armrests of his chair, a faint hint of tension in his jawline betraying the calm facade he was trying to maintain. Jada, sitting beside him, gave him a quick, concerned glance but kept her composure. Adrian, still, trying to salvage the moment, forced a smile. "Just a joke, folks. You know, it's all in good fun, right?" The silence lingered longer than anyone in the room was comfortable with. The audience seemed unsure whether to laugh or remain in this heavy moment of discomfort. Will finally stood up slowly, his movements deliberate. The room fell even quieter, all eyes on him as he made his way to the stage. Adrian's eyes widened, unsure whether Will was about to confront him or simply walk off. But Will's next actions would redefine the night. With a calm but unwavering voice, Will addressed the crowd. "It's one thing to make jokes," he began, "but there's a line between humor and respect. You crossed that line tonight." Adrian's face flushed a deep red, realizing the severity of what had just transpired. The crowd remained frozen, holding their breath as the tension between the two men built. Will, without raising his voice, continued. "A joke should lift people up, not bring them down, and that's the last time I'll let something like that slide." With that, he turned and walked back to his seat, his posture confident but calm, his dignity intact. The room was still. Nobody dared to break the silence. Even Adrian stood frozen for a moment, unsure of how to respond to Will's composed confrontation. Finally, the host of the event, sensing the delicate situation, stepped in to ease the tension. "Well, let's get back to the awards, shall we?" they said, their voice slightly strained. The night carried on, but the atmosphere was forever altered. Will's response wasn't about confrontation. It was a subtle but powerful reminder about boundaries, respect, and how even in a room full of stars, integrity should always shine brighter than a joke at someone's expense. As Will reached the stage, the room held its breath. Every eye in the audience was glued to him, wondering what he would do next. Adrian, still trying to maintain his casual air, took a step back, unsure whether to continue joking or to apologize. Will stood tall, his posture unyielding, but there was no anger in his expression, just a quiet intensity. He looked directly at Adrian, his voice calm but firm. "You know, jokes can be funny," Will began, his tone controlled but heavy with meaning. "But there's a fine line between humor and disrespect. And you crossed that line tonight." The room went deathly quiet. The murmurs from earlier had completely stopped, and even the air seemed to freeze as Will's words landed. Adrian's smile faltered, and he shifted his weight uncomfortably. The audience could see that the playful atmosphere had shifted into something much more serious. Will didn't raise his voice. There was no need for theatrics. His gaze never wavered from Adrian. "I've spent a long time in this industry and I've been on the receiving end of a lot of jokes, but there's one thing I've learned. When you make a joke at someone else's expense, it's not just their reputation that's at risk, it's yours too." Adrian blinked, stunned by the weight of Will's words. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but nothing came out. The audience waited, sensing the tension building in the room. Even the other presenters backstage had stopped what they were doing, listening in on the exchange. Will took a step back and let his words sink in. "I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to argue. But I do want to remind you and everyone else in this room that respect should always come first. And that includes knowing when a joke isn't worth the laugh." With that, he turned and began walking back to his seat, The room remained silent for several seconds before a few tentative claps began. Slowly, the applause grew, filling the room, and the tension that had gripped everyone began to fade. Adrian stood frozen, caught between his pride and the realization of what had just happened. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. The message had been clear. Will sat back down next to Jada, who gave him a reassuring smile. He didn't need to say anything more. His presence, his words, and the grace with which he handled the situation spoke volumes. The rest of the night continued, but the crowd was forever changed by that brief moment of confrontation. Will Smith had not just confronted a comment, it was a reminder that integrity and respect should always come before anything else, no matter the stage. The entire room was in stunned silence. It felt as if time itself had frozen. The sharp crack of the slap was still reverberating in the air, and the atmosphere was thick with disbelief. Adrian stood motionless for a moment, his hand hovering over his face where Will's slap had landed. His usual confident, joking demeanor had vanished, replaced by a look of utter shock. The audience sat, frozen in place, unsure of how to react. Some looked at each other, waiting for a sign of what would come next. Others simply stared at Will, who had already turned his back and was making his way calmly back to his seat, his posture unwavering. Adrian finally moved, his hand still pressed against his cheek, as he slowly turned his gaze toward the host. The host, who had been visibly shaken by the altercation, stepped forward awkwardly, unsure of what to say. Well, I think we all need a moment to process that, the host stammered, attempting to regain control of the situation. But the damage had been done. Will had made his point with the action he had taken, and his message was loud and clear. The room remained still for a long beat, as if waiting for something, anything, to break the tension. Jada, sitting next to Will, was calm, but looked intently at the stage. She didn't speak, but the slight nod she gave him when he returned to his seat seemed to communicate understanding and support. The presenter, still trying to recover from the shock, cleared their throat. Well, that was certainly an unexpected turn of events, they muttered. The awkwardness lingered in the air, and many in the audience were unsure whether they should clap, laugh, or remain silent. It wasn't until Will sat down, his eyes still focused on Adrian, that the audience began to stir. Whispers rippled through the crowd, and many began to murmur among themselves, recounting what had just transpired. A few bold souls began to clap, tentatively at first, but then the applause grew. Will, calm and composed, did not react. He simply sat there, his face set in a serious expression, making it clear that he had done what he felt was necessary. His message had been delivered without words, through a single decisive action. Adrian, still stunned, was left standing on stage, the weight of the situation settling in. He could feel the eyes of the entire room on him now, but no amount of rehearsed responses could erase what had just happened. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words failed him. Instead, he simply nodded as if conceding defeat. His moment of bravado had been shattered. For the rest of the evening, the tension never fully dissipated. Conversations were hushed, and many guests continued to steal glances at Will. The event proceeded, but evening had become the atmosphere had irrevocably shifted. What had started as a celebratory of reckoning, both for Adrian and for the people who had witnessed the slap, Will Smith had made his point. Respect is not something to be taken lightly, and sometimes actions speak louder than words. Adrian stood motionless for a few more seconds, his face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and disbelief. The slap had been swift, and the weight of it now seemed to press down on him from all angles. The audience's murmurs had escalated into a low buzz, the initial shock beginning to wear off as they processed what had just unfolded. He could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on him, their gazes heavy with judgment and curiosity. The quiet applause that followed Will's action lingered in the air like a soft echo. Some people were applauding in support of Will's decisive move, while others were unsure of where to place their allegiance. Adrian's usual bravado had all but evaporated, replaced with a rare vulnerability he was unaccustomed to showing. As the host, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, stumbled over their words, Adrian finally took a shaky breath and broke the silence. He raised a hand to his face, his fingers lightly brushing the spot where Will's slap had landed. I think I owe an apology," he said, his voice cracking slightly. The room grew quieter, the tension palpable as everyone waited to hear his next words. Adrian hesitated, clearly caught between his pride and the reality of the situation. "I crossed a line," he admitted. "That wasn't okay." He paused again, this time glancing toward Will, who had settled back into his seat, his posture still calm but resolute. Will didn't react, his gaze fixed ahead, making it clear that the moment was over for him, but not for Adrian. "I wasn't trying to start something like this," Adrian continued, the weight of his previous comments now hitting him hard. "I've made jokes before, but I'll be the first to admit that was too far. I respect Will, and I've learned that sometimes we just have to be mindful of how our words land." The audience, still uneasy, was waiting for a moment of closure. Something to signal that the awkwardness could dissipate. The host, sensing an opportunity, quickly stepped in. "Thank you for acknowledging that, Adrian. I think we can all agree that respect is paramount, and it's important to understand the impact of our words." Adrian nodded, his expression now somber. He glanced at Will one more time, offering a subtle, almost apologetic nod, but Will's gaze never wavered. He remained quiet, his face expressionless, as if he had already moved on. There was no need for further acknowledgement. The message had been delivered loud and clear. As the event proceeded, the mood in the room remained uneasy, but it gradually returned to normal. However, the ripple effects of the moment would last far longer. The footage of the slap would undoubtedly go viral, sparking countless debates about the boundaries of humor, respect, and how far one can push before facing consequences. For Adrian, it was a stark reminder that no matter how powerful or untouchable one may feel, there are moments where actions must align with integrity. For Will, it was a moment of standing up for his values, one that would forever define the course of the evening. What do you think about Will's reaction? Was it justified, or did Adrian go too far? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more unbelievable moments.